Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. Seems like a while since I've been on here, and truth be told, that is because I've had a couple of projects that haven't gone according to plan, that should have made it onto my YouTube channel by now, but haven't for various reasons. One's there, and one's right over there in the naughty corner. Maybe you will see them on here, maybe you won't. It depends if I can pull them back from the brink of disaster. Don't know what that noise was. Anyway, in the meantime, what I did is found this little table in a charity shop, and I love the shape of it, but it was in very poor condition. So, rather than try and make it immaculate again, because that's not what I'm about, I embraced it, and I have kind of used it as a little bit of a project to reset myself in order to gain a little bit of calm to tackle the projects that aren't going so well. I did all the things that I love doing on this: texture, wax, the colour green, all the things that I love. So this is a little project of all my favourite things put together, and I hope you enjoy it. So as you can see, this has got a factory finish on it, and I'm not going to strip this because there's absolutely no need at all. But what I am going to do is just fill that little bit of a kind of detailing on around the top, because I don't want it there basically. So I just use wood filler and then use my electric sander to sand it smooth once it had dried. I've just moved in my kitchen because number one, it's cold in my workshop. Number two, quite frankly, there's no room. I've got loads of pieces on the go. So we're on my kitchen table, in my kitchen. The light in here isn't as good as in there, but it's okay. So what I'm going to do now is just lightly run over the surface. As I mentioned, I'm not going to strip this paint off. There's no need. What's underneath is not worth it. And the paint is really, really well on the surface. So there's no need to strip it all off. Bond Emboss is really good for adhesion onto slippery surfaces. This is quite a shiny finish paint. It's like an eggshelly kind of finish. So I'm going to sand it down. I'm going to give it another quick clean, and then I'm going to prime with Bond Emboss. So just because something has a factory finish on it, it doesn't mean that it can't be painted. It absolutely can. All you need to do is follow the relevant steps for prep. So in my case, I had filled the damage. I'm going to get a quick sand, and then I'm going to clean. You can do the cleaning first if you'd prefer. It doesn't really matter, if I'm being honest, as long as you don't skip that step altogether. And then I'm going to apply Bond Emboss. So this is the product that is going to help my paint stick to that surface, which is quite a shiny surface, as I mentioned earlier on. I'm going to do 2 coats of Bond Emboss because that is what's advised, and then I'm going to leave it 24 hours to dry down completely before I start with my paint. So for the base colour, I'm going to go with a nice neutral shade that covers really well. This one's called Drop Cloth, and it's from Dixie Belle's Chalk Mineral Paint range. And I'm just going to go with this because when I distress back, I want to see little hints of that neutral colour. The main colour that I'm going to use is called Everglades, and this is from Dixie Belle's Silk All-in-One Mineral Paint range, and I'm going to add some sea spray into it. So this powder is a texture additive, and as you can see, it makes your paint clumpy and thick and lets you get lots of texture in your paint. So Silk Mineral Paint lends itself really well to more modern, sleek finishes, but you can also distress it as well, and I've even done like a kind of chippy finish with Silk Mineral Paint as well. It just is a little bit harder to distress because this paint is very, very durable. It's got a built-in top coat, and the longer you leave it to dry, the harder it is to distress, which I'll show you in a second. So I'm just using the natural bristle brush. This is a premium chip brush, and generally speaking, natural bristles are going to give you a little bit more texture than something with synthetic bristles. So I'm just using that brush to kind of dab that mixture in random areas. This is a really good technique if you have got something that is a little bit aged and worn and battered, like this table. It's imperfect, it's not in completely A1 pristine condition, so this is going to help disguise some of that wear and tear. So The texture is more or less touch dry. The areas where it was a little bit thicker, still a little bit wet, but that's okay. And now I'm going to go over the top of it in exactly the same colour, but with no texture. So this is Everglades, straight out of the jar with this brush, which is the Belle brush. And I'm just going to go straight over the top of it to give it full coverage of this colour. I wouldn't usually apply silk quite this thickly. As you can see, I am really kind of laying it on quite thick here, but that's because I'm going for a textured finish and lots of distressing and stuff. So if I was using silk for like a more sleek one colour modern finish, I wouldn't be applying it this thickly. I also probably wouldn't be using this brush, but for the purpose of this video, it's absolutely fine. This is the colour that I wanted to use, so that's why I'm using silk for this. But it is worth bearing in mind that it is slightly easier to distress chalk mineral paint than it is silk mineral paint. All paints have got different properties and kind of lend themselves to different things better, and silk typically isn't one that I'd use or reach for to do distressing, but like I said, I wanted to use this colour. Just before I distress this piece, if it wasn't apparent already, I am a little bit obsessed with this stencil. It's called the Bone Inlay stencil, and it's from Dixie Belle. You get it in a big sheet. I cut mine up because I like to use it on pieces like this. So I'm just finishing this piece off. And obviously on this piece I've used pretty much every single element on the stencil pattern, and there are loads so that you can create your own kind of design on whatever furniture size and shape you've got. Obviously on this one there's not a huge amount of flat space. I could go on it on the top, but the top, with it having the most amount of damage and stuff, I feel like that's going to be quite chippy. So what I'm going to do is just add a tiny little bit of it. I'm going to use this one, and all I'm going to do is just put it around here, just around the edge of the table, all the way around the edge. I'm going to use the original base colour, which was drop cloth, so hopefully there'll be a nice contrast. And the reason I'm doing it before I distress is obviously because if I stencil after I've distressed, the stencil's going to look perfect, and if I want it to kind of look old and worn and chippy and authentic, the stencil would be aged and chippy as well. So that's the reason I'm doing it now before I distress it. So just because this stencil is part of a bigger piece, part of a bigger kind of set, if you like, that you can create your own bone inlay style piece, it doesn't mean you can't use those elements separately as well. So you get a load of stencils for your money, especially if you like using pieces like this for little borders and stuff. It just looks really cute. And then I'm going to distress it. So people often ask me if silk is durable enough on its own without a top coat, because obviously it has a top coat built into the paint. I very rarely top coat silk because I don't need to, because I know how durable it is. But if you look here, this piece has been dry overnight. Now I wish I'd have distressed it the day before, but I ran out of daylight for filming, and obviously I'm filming for a YouTube video, so I had to leave it overnight until the next morning when I could distress it. I took my metal scraper to it and it would not budge. It did chip off some of the areas that were the highest peaks of texture that I created, but apart from that, it wasn't budging at all. So my answer to that question is no, you don't need to top coat with silk. It is very, very durable. So I had to use my electric sander to distress in the end. I actually wanted more of a chippy look, but when you use an electric sander or sand, it gives you more of a worn kind of distressed look. But that's okay, we're going with it. So then I used clear wax all over the piece, and although this has got a built-in top coat, I'm going to use clear wax first because I'm going to go in with brown wax, and the brown wax is just gonna, it's basically the clear wax as a base first is going to help me control the brown wax. So because I distressed it in areas, you can see a little bit of the drop cloth as well, which is a chalk mineral paint colour. The clear wax is going to add a little bit of a sheen, a little bit of a lustre, and it's also going to help protect the table, as well as helping me control this brown wax. So for the brown wax, I'm going to create shading. I'm using a dry chip brush. This has got natural bristles, and I'm putting a little bit on the end of my bristles and then going around the edge of the table. Once I've done all the edges, all 4 edges, I'm then going to use what's left on my bristles to kind of work that in so that there's no harsh lines. It's a nice kind of faded, antique-y kind of look. There's enough product on those bristles to get that kind of blended look, and then I'm just going to take it right into the center again so there's no harsh lines where the brown wax ends and the clear wax starts, if that makes sense. And then I kind of just followed that process all the way around the table, and this way you do get nice variation with the shading. It's not kind of brown wax all over, it just gives a nice little bit of a contrast. And then the last thing you're going to do with wax is buff it. I'm using the lint-free rags that you can buy from Dixie Belle just to give it a nice buff over, and this just takes any excess product off the surface and gives it that really nice sheen. Here's a couple of super close-ups of all the texture and that little cute stencil detail around the side, which I think suits this piece really well. A little bit distressed on the top, I'm not going to lie, I wish it had been distressed a little bit more on the top, but it is what it is, and here's the finished piece. Thank you for watching the video. As always, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed, and I will catch you next time. Bye!